At was 3:47 local time this morning, the United States Navy lost the most expensive warship ever built. The USS Gerald Ford, CVN-78, America's newest and most advanced aircraft carrier, is no longer operational. Iranian state media claims they sank it. The Pentagon calls it fabricated propaganda. And somewhere in the Arabian Sea, 4,500 American sailors are either dead, missing, or floating in debris fields spanning 3 square kilometers. Let me tell you exactly what we know, what we don't know, and why the gap between those two is more terrifying than either version of events. The USS Gerald Ford cost American taxpayers $13 billion to build. That excludes the aircraft it carries, another $7 billion in F-35Cs, F/A-18 Super Hornets, EA-18G Growlers, and support aircraft. It excludes decades of maintenance, nuclear fuel, training pipelines, total lifetime operating cost over its projected 50-year service, approximately $120 billion. This is not a ship. This is a floating investment larger than the GDP of 80 countries. And according to Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps statements released 3 hours ago, it now rests on the ocean floor, 580 meters below the surface. Here is what Iran claims happened. At 3:30 local time, Iranian forces launched a coordinated strike against the Gerald Ford Carrier Strike Group. The attack consisted of 47 College-Fars anti-ship ballistic missiles, 23 Qatar cruise missiles, and 340 Shahed 136 kamikaze drones launched from coastal positions and small boats. Iranian commanders claim multiple direct hits on the carrier, that the ship listed 18 degrees to port within 4 minutes, that secondary explosions from aviation fuel were visible from shore, and that the vessel capsized within 22 minutes. They released thermal satellite imagery showing massive heat signature consistent with ship-killing fire. They published radio intercepts they claim are from escort vessels, requesting immediate search and rescue. And they stated debris recovery operations are underway by Iranian naval forces. The Pentagon's response was released at 0615 Eastern Time. The statement reads in full, "Reports of damage to USS Gerald Ford are categorically false. The carrier and its strike group continue normal operations in support of regional security." Iran's claims are propaganda designed to mislead international audiences. That is the entire statement. No photographs of the carrier sailing safely. No video of flight operations. No position confirmation. 2 sentences. And if you have watched this channel, you know that when the Pentagon responds to alleged catastrophic loss with 2 sentences and 0 evidence, something is very wrong. Let me explain what the Gerald Ford actually is, because understanding this ship is understanding why its loss would represent the single largest military defeat America has suffered since World War II. The Gerald Ford is the lead ship of a new class replacing Nimitz carriers that formed America's naval backbone for 50 years. It is 106 feet long, displaces 100,000 tons fully loaded, carries 75 aircraft. But the real capability is not in size. It is in technology. Electromagnetic launch systems instead of steam catapults allow 25% more sorties per day. Advanced arresting gear recovers heavier aircraft. Dual-band radar tracks 800 contacts simultaneously. Automated weapons elevators reduce crew requirements by 500 personnel compared to Nimitz-class ships. This was supposed to represent the future of carrier aviation. If Iran's claims are true, the future just sank in 22 minutes. The mathematics of defending against saturation attacks has always favored the attacker once threshold capability is reached. The Gerald Ford's strike group includes the cruiser USS Gettysburg with Aegis, plus destroyers USS Ramage, USS McFall, and USS Laboon. Combined, approximately 360 vertical launch cells carrying standard missile interceptors. That sounds impressive until you calculate what 410 incoming threats means. Each ballistic missile requires 2 interceptors minimum. That is, 94 for 47 missiles. Cruise missiles need 1 to 2 each, and 340 Shahed 136 drones at $20,000 each force. American ships to fire rolling airframe missiles at $900,000, or evolved Sea Sparrow at $1.4 million, or fall back to close-in guns firing $30 rounds at $4,500 per minute. Either way, you run out before the threats do. And while escorts burn defensive weapons on cheap drones, the expensive ballistic missiles find gaps in coverage. This is the saturation attack problem American carrier groups have never faced in actual combat. During Desert Storm, Iraq War, operations against ISIS, American carriers operated where adversaries could not generate enough simultaneous threats to overwhelm defenses. Iran is not Iraq. Iran spent 40 years building anti-access, area denial capability, specifically to sink American carriers in the Persian Gulf and Arabian Sea. They studied every carrier defense exercise, every interceptor limitation, every radar blind spot. If their claims are accurate, that capability just worked exactly as designed. Here is what should terrify American naval planners. The cost-exchange ratio. Iran claims they fired 47 ballistic missiles, 23 cruise missiles, and 340 drones. A college FARS costs Iran approximately $500,000. Qatar cruise missiles cost $300,000. Shahed 136 drones cost $20,000. Total Iranian strike, approximately $37 million. Defending required Standard Missile 6 interceptors at $4.3 million each. Standard Missile 2 at $2.4 million, Evolved Sea Sparrow at $1.4 million, Rolling Airframe at $900,000. If American forces fired 200 interceptors against 410 threats, the defensive expenditure was $300 million to $600 million. Iran spent $37 million, America spent 10 times that defending. And according to Iranian claims, the defense failed anyway. Now let me tell you about the human cost. The USS Gerald Ford carries approximately 4,500 personnel, including ship's company, air wing, and specialists. If the ship sank as Iran claims, 22 minutes from first hit to capsizing, there would not have been time for orderly evacuation. Carriers lack enough lifeboats for full crew. They rely on damage control to keep afloat until rescue arrives. A nighttime sinking in open ocean, crew sleeping below the waterline, watertight doors sealing automatically, passageways flooding in darkness. If the ship went down in 22 minutes, survival rate would be catastrophically low. We are potentially looking at thousands of American deaths, not dozens, not hundreds. Thousands. The Pentagon has not released casualty figures. They have not confirmed search and rescue operations are underway. They have not provided any information beyond the 2-sentence denial. And that silence is its own confirmation. When the Navy wants to prove a ship is safe, they show the ship, they release footage, they demonstrate operational capability. The absence of that demonstration is deafening. Let me address the strategic implications. American carrier strike groups are the foundation of power projection. They put military force anywhere without requiring foreign basing permission. Carriers provide air cover for amphibious operations, strike capability for no-fly zones, presence that deters regional aggression. American alliances in the Pacific and Middle East assume carriers can arrive, establish dominance, and operate with impunity. If Iran just sank the Gerald Ford, that assumption is dead. Every adversary is watching. China, because they have built carrier-killer missiles for 20 years to prevent American intervention over Taiwan. Russia, because their naval doctrine relies on saturation attacks against Aegis. North Korea, to see if cheap weapons defeat expensive defenses. And every American ally is watching to see if the security guarantee they relied on for 70 years is still valid. If carriers can be sunk, the guarantee means nothing. Here's what we can verify independently. Satellite tracking shows the Gerald Ford's transponder went offline at 0351 local time, 4 minutes after Iran claims first impacts. Commercial shipping diverted from a zone 150 nautical miles in diameter, centered on the carrier's last position. Multiple P-8 Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft used for search and rescue and submarine hunting, converging from bases in Djibouti and Diego Garcia. Navy navigational warnings, closing international waters to civilian traffic. Strike group vessels conducting search patterns. These are not actions responding to fake propaganda. These are emergency operations in a disaster zone. The question everyone is asking is whether Iran actually has this capability. Let me answer with specifics. Iran's college FARS missile is a Fateh 110 variant with terminal guidance for moving ships. Range 300 kilometers, speed exceeding Mach 3 terminal phase, using radar and infrared seekers. The missile performs evasive maneuvers and final approach to defeat point defenses. American assessments from 2019 concluded the Khalij FARS represents a credible threat to carriers. The Qatar cruise missile flies sea-skimming below 10 meters, difficult to detect until very close. The Shahed 136 has proven itself in Ukraine as a cheap, reliable one-way attack platform that overwhelms defenses through numbers. Iran has all the weapons it claims to have used. Capability verified. The only question is execution. Now let me walk through what American defenses should have done and why they might have failed. Aegis uses SPY-1D radar detecting threats beyond 300 kilometers, calculates intercept solutions, assigns weapons automatically. In theory, an Aegis cruiser engages multiple simultaneous threats across the radar horizon. But theory uses controlled exercises with known quantities. Real combat involves more threats than expected, from unexpected vectors, using unexpected tactics. And real combat does not pause when you run out of interceptors. If Iran launched 340 drones first, forcing American ships to expend close-in defenses and short-range missiles, then followed with cruise missiles to deplete medium-range interceptors, then finished with ballistic missiles timed to arrive, when defensive magazines were reduced, the attack sequence would overwhelm even the most sophisticated air defense system ever built. This is basic operational planning. Exhaust the defender's cheap weapons with cheap threats, strike with expensive weapons when the defender must use expensive interceptors, and if you have more threats than the defender has weapons, mathematics guarantees some get through. Pentagon officials have spent 15 years insisting carriers are too well defended to be sunk by regional adversaries. They pointed to layered defense, overlapping coverage, technological superiority. They were technically correct in every scenario. They were gamed every exercise they conducted because those scenarios validated existing doctrine. Nobody wargamed 410 weapons fired simultaneously in coordinated sequence, optimized to deplete specific defenses in specific order. If they had, they would have discovered what may have just happened. The carrier loses. Let me tell you what happens next if this is real. First, every American operation relying on carrier aviation stops immediately. Strikes on Iranian targets, gone. Combat air patrols over Iraq and Syria, gone. The carrier was a mobile airbase supporting operations across an area the size of Western Europe. Losing it means losing those capabilities until a replacement arrives, which takes weeks. Second, American credibility collapses. Every partner nation hosting U.S. forces, every ally relying on security guarantees, every adversary calculating risk, they all watched. The most powerful military lose its most advanced warship to a country with 100th the defense budget. Gulf states, debating whether to restrict American basing, just got their answer. Third, financial markets react. Defense contractors face questions about product viability. Insurance rates for military operations spike. Oil prices surge because Strait of Hormuz transit just became exponentially more dangerous. And the dollar's status as reserve currency takes a hit accountants will calculate for years. But here's the thing that keeps me awake. We do not actually know if any of this is true. Iran could be lying. The Pentagon could be lying. Both could be partially lying. We are operating in an information environment where both sides have every incentive to misrepresent reality, and the physical evidence is at the bottom of the ocean or classified beyond public access. So let me give you the framework I am using to evaluate this. Ask what each side's behavior reveals. Iran released detailed claims within hours, specifics on weapon types, quantities, timeline, effects. That level of detail is either based on actual operational data or sophisticated fabrication. The Pentagon released 2 sentences with 0 evidence. No photos, no video, no location confirmation. When the Pentagon wants to disprove enemy propaganda, they make it visibly obvious. This time, silence. Ask what independent evidence shows. Transponder offline, shipping diversions, aircraft movements, navigational warnings, all suggest something requiring large-scale search and rescue or salvage operations. Ask what the cost-benefit reveals. Would Iran risk international condemnation and potential retaliation by fabricating claims this big? Would America risk credibility damage by denying an event that can eventually be verified? Both sides are making very high-stakes bets. My assessment, based on 20 years of reading intelligence reports and watching crisis communications, is that something catastrophic happened to the Gerald Ford. The Pentagon is engaged in damage control until they understand the full scope, and Iran is exploiting the information gap to shape the narrative before America can respond effectively. The truth is probably between completely sunk and perfectly fine, but closer to the Iranian version than the Pentagon wants to admit. Here is what I want you to understand as we close. Whether the carrier sank completely or suffered major damage, keeping it out of action for months, the operational result is the same. American power projection in the Middle East just took a hit it has not experienced since the fall of Saigon. The myth of carrier invincibility is dead. The assumption that regional adversaries cannot challenge American naval dominance is dead, and the calculus that every ally and adversary uses to determine their relationship with the United States just changed permanently. If you found this analysis valuable, subscribe to this channel because I'm going to continue tracking this story as information emerges. The mainstream media is going to show you Pentagon press conferences and Iranian propaganda footage and call it journalism. They are not going to do the math on saturation attacks. They are not going to explain cost exchange ratios. They are not going to connect American credibility in the Pacific to what just happened in the Arabian Sea. But I am. Share this video because the people around you are going to hear 2 completely contradictory stories and have no framework for evaluating which is closer to truth. Give them the framework. Give them the numbers. Give them the questions that need answers. The USS Gerald Ford, if it still exists, is damaged badly enough that the Pentagon cannot or will not show it. If it does not exist, 4,500 Americans are dead, and the largest single-day loss in American military history just occurred. Either scenario means the same thing strategically. The carrier, as a symbol of untouchable American power, is gone. And every decision made from this point forward, every alliance calculation, every deterrence posture, every defense budget priority, happens in a world where carriers can be killed. Iran spent $37 million to prove it. The question is what America does next.